Okay, so what we're going to talk about now is the old SWOT chart. Something we hear a lot about, sometimes good, sometimes bad, a very misunderstood tool, and something that some people sort of take at a very basic level and don't really take beyond that. So let's have a bit more depth on that, a bit more discussion. So we'll cover a few different things at the moment. We're going to cover, well, what is a SWOT chart, okay? We're going to also look at what are the different aspects. We're going to understand a strength and a weakness, and we're going to start looking at, really understanding, well, what is an opportunity and a threat? So really SWOT, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. Fairly straightforward, 4 boxes to worry about, but they all start to involve each other very quickly. So what a SWOT analysis is, it's the foundation for developing a strategy. Okay, the reason we do this is whenever we're thinking, okay, I want to go do something, quick, before I go, let's just do a quick SWOT. Let's understand what's taking place. Let's understand, what our strengths and weaknesses are, and start to think about, well, what's out there that's an opportunity I can take advantage of, and what's a threat that's going to stop me achieving my goal. So we want to get, at least some awareness of that before we begin, and once we've got that, it'll allow us to make some good decisions. So prior to thinking about our strengths, what we need to do is we need to make sure that there's a few things we have in place. So prior to understanding what our strengths are, we might need to think about, well, what's our vision? And what's our mission? In other words, what are we trying to do? Okay, what do we say we're good at? Those things need to be written, and they need to be in place so that we can refer back to them and really sort of, talk about who we are and what we're doing, and also see whether we're actually living up to that. What we should also do is make sure that we've actually taken a bit of an analysis, have a good analysis of ourselves and make sure that we're really aware of exactly where we are at that point in time, What are our stock levels? What are our customer service skills like? Whatever it happens to be in your industry, where are we actually at? To make sure that, what we think we have is actually what we do have. Okay, we don't want to be going off with false assumptions. Okay, so the other things we think about, so when we're talking about those strengths, what we're starting to think about is our internal attributes of the organisation that are helpful in achieving my goal. Okay, so these are things that will help me. Okay? Things that are actually working for us and helping us achieve those objectives. If you say we want to be doing good customer service, well, what do we have to help us? Is it we have the best quality staff, we have good training, what is it about that we have that's a strength of our organisation? Over here we have our weaknesses. These are the things, we might not be so good. These are things to help me, these are things that we aren't so great at. So they're our internal shortfalls of the organisation that are harmful to achieving our goal. We might have brilliantly trained staff, but we don't have the right number. So we might have insufficient staff. Okay, so that might be a weakness. We don't have the right number of them. We don't have enough. Okay, or we might still be small, or we still might be new. There could be other things working against us that we're not so great at. Okay, we might be well-meaning and trying, but we're not actually there yet. So that might start to ruin our day. When we start to put things in the opportunity box, we're looking at external conditions that are helpful for us achieving that. Okay, so once again, if our mission and vision say that we want to, achieve great customer service standards, well, what are the opportunities out there? So, what's out there that's going to help me? Anything that can help me or that I can take advantage of to help me achieve my goals. Okay, and then lastly, what are the threats? So these are the things that are harmful. Okay, or they're going to stop me achieving that goal. Okay, so these are things that are harmful, and it could be that, there's new competitors coming into an area. It could be, new standards or legislation coming out. There can be a whole range of things that are going to stop me achieving my goal. Okay, so I need to very clearly identify them. Okay, so why we're doing that is to make sure that we understand what the benefits or, what benefits are on an analysis of the external and internal factors. Okay, we need to know what's going on. We need to know why we're trying to achieve what we're achieving, what's going to work for us, what's not actually so good that we might need to overcome or adapt to. Down here, we're starting to look at, well, what can we take advantage of? And over there, well, what's going to stop us achieving that? Okay, so we're always thinking about, how these things work. Okay, so once again, our strengths and opportunities, that's a fairly good thing for us to start thinking about. Well, how are we going to use those strengths to get those opportunities? Now, opportunities and threats, they're very external. Okay, so they're very external factors, and these are really internal factors. Okay, so that's looking at inside the organisation. Okay, so we've got internal and internal. Obviously, we're talking about us. With the opportunities and threats, we're looking outside the organisation. What's happening outside? Okay, so, you know, when we're looking at our strengths and weaknesses, so once again, those internal factors, we might start to think about in terms of, well, what are our resources? You know, what money do we have available? You know, what intellectual talent do we have? Do we have a great location? Do we have a bad location? What is our location? We might think about, are we able to get cost advantages from our know-how and our skills and ability? Could it be, you know, we've got exclusive access to a resource? Could it be that we have good distribution networks? Okay, these are all the things that we start to look at with strengths. Are there government rules that are helping us if we're looking at the strengths themselves? What about our creativity and our ability to develop new products, okay, or our inability? What's our product range and diversity like? Do we have good products? Do we have a range of products? You know, do we have intangible assets, you know, customer goodwill? Are we engaged in cooperative ventures with other people? In other words, have we got anything we can marshal that's going to help us? Okay, for when we're starting to look at the external, okay, we're starting to look out there in the broader marketplace. You know, what's happening with other competitors? Are there takeovers taking place? What's the market starting to do? Is the market expanding, contracting? What's happening out there? What's the economic conditions? What's the interest rates like? What strategic alliances are forming that might actually start to damage us? Do we have stakeholders out there that have a higher expectation? Is technology changing, and what does that mean for us? Can we take advantage of a new emerging technology? For example, on a coffee shop, they might have something like Rewardle, where they're actually starting to recognise and reward customers, which has taken the place of the old sort of, you know, customer loyalty cards. You know, is that something I could take advantage of? And what happens if I don't take advantage of that? Okay, so the expectations of the public start to get in there. We start thinking about, well, what are the competitors doing? We start thinking about what's the customer relationships like, and, you know, and how are we perceived? We need to start thinking about, you know, what's being written about us in the press, whether it's against just our industry or us as a business or our sector. And we need to start thinking, well, what's happening in the global market where we get our products from? All right, so that's really all those things we're starting to look at. When we're looking at SWOT, we're really looking at, you know, the DIY SWOT is really about focus on us. All right, it could also be focused on you. All right, so it can be you, it could be your group, it could be, you know, your business unit. You can expand it out to your company. Okay, so this is a scalable tool. It doesn't always have to be about you as the business. Okay, it can be you as the person, or you as a smaller team. Okay, it doesn't always have to be that bigger picture. Regardless of what level you do it at, though, make sure that you know, you keep in mind the goals that you're trying to achieve. Okay, so we've always got to come back down to this. Okay, make sure it's in place. Make sure you've got good documentation, because that's what's going to help you, and make sure you really clearly understand what you're trying to do. All right, and that'll start to give you a good starting ground from you know, to what's going to happen from there, and to understand what the strengths and weaknesses, etc., are. Okay, so you know, if we start to look at how these things come together, we start to look at our strengths, and we look at our opportunities. Okay, there's a pretty good link. If we get that, we use the strengths to our maximum advantage. There's an opportunity, happens to fall in line with our strength. Great, we use our strength and straight away we get into there. Okay, we could also use, if we have strengths against a threat, then really what it comes down to is we need to start thinking about a strategy about how can we use our strength, okay, to reduce the consequence of that external thing. You know, if our strength is our good brand and the threat is there's a change in the market, how do we use our good brand to defend against that position? Okay, so if we start thinking about the opportunities, okay, and they meet up with our weaknesses, well, that's going to become a bit of a problem. You know, opportunities meeting the weaknesses, that's when we start thinking about, well, how are we going to overcome these weaknesses? Okay, there's an opportunity out there, but we're not so good in this area. Our tactic really becomes about solving this problem. How do we fix our weakness so that we can get back to taking advantage of that? Okay, so how do we stop that weakness losing the opportunity? Okay, and the other problem is if we end up with weaknesses and threats, well, that's probably not such a good idea, okay? Because what's happening is there's a change, and unfortunately that change or that threat coming along is also hitting our point of weakness. So what we need to work out is how we're going to prevent that weakness becoming even more of a threat. How we're going to make sure that this actually isn't amplifying or enhancing that problem to us. So how we're going to at least do that damage control and prevent things going forward. Okay, so they all start to interplay. If we're looking at strengths then, really if we're looking at strengths, our whole conversation is always based around what do we do well, okay? What product or service areas do, or what things do we excel at, okay? What's our value add? Do we have the best value add products? Do we have the best cross-sell? How do we enhance value to our people? What makes us unique? And what things do we have that are highly regarded? So what do people like us for? When we're dealing with the weaknesses, we start to ask the questions of, well, what do we not do so well? More to the point, how do we know that? How are we finding out what we suck at? Okay, if we're bad at something, how do we know? Is it just the direct feedback or what's telling us? With our weaknesses, it starts talking about, well, what do we need to improve? In what way? By whom? Who needs to fix it? Okay, so what is it we need to fix and who needs to be fixing that? The other problem is what if there's weaknesses that we don't know about but other people do? Okay, that becomes a problem there. We're not always aware of our shortcomings. Sometimes we think we're okay and other people say, well, actually, let me tell you about that. Okay, so, the other thing that it might be if you're looking at a personal level, what is it that your team or what is it your staff are looking for that you just don't do? Okay, you might not be the right leader type or you might have a different approach. It might not be the one that works for them. We need to think about if they're expecting something and you're delivering something different, that creates a bit of a dissonance and you probably need to work out how am I going to fix that. Okay, so the other one then, obviously, if we're talking about team, is well, what do the customers want that we're not providing? Okay, are we making decisions based on assumption or do we make decisions based on cold hard fact? Okay, when we're making decisions, do we use an I reckon approach or are we using an informed approach? Okay, you can make an I reckon approach as long as it's still informed. Okay, make sure you got the information and you're not just pulling figures out of the sky. Opportunities. So when we start to look at what are the questions in opportunities, we start to ask ourselves, well, what's going to be out there that's going to help us become more successful in achieving our goals? What can I take advantage of out there? Okay, where would I find those opportunities? Okay, sometimes they're not available, like obviously available. We'll have to go digging for them. But where would we dig? Okay, it's like looking for gold. We can't just it'll come along. Sometimes you have to go and look for it, but there are signs to where that's going to be. We start to think about, well, what external changes or events can I take advantage of? Okay, is there a change in demographics? Is one of the local businesses is closing down? I have to say that when I was a bank manager, it was fantastic when one of the competitors closed because I just went straight over and started nabbing all their customers really quickly. Said, well, they're going to be out of the area. Do you really want to travel all that way? We're in the local area. This is what we can do for you. And very quickly, heaps of customers for us. It was, their loss, our gain. Sorry, guys. Well, actually, no, I wasn't. Okay, so the last one there is thinking about the threats. So what financial problems do we have? Okay, what about, is our cash flow okay? What's happening there? We start to think about, well, what are the internal or external changes that start to threaten us? Is it we have the staff are moving on? Is there a mobility there? What's going on around us that's going to affect us? How do I know or what do I know about my competitors? Do I actually really understand who they are and what they're doing? Are they successful? If they are, why? How? How do I know? What am I tracking, okay, to make sure that I actually have the complete picture? Okay, what obstacles are in our progress? Is there things coming up or, is it, we need to get approval for things or, anything that might stymie us or ruin our day becomes a bit of an issue and how am I going to overcome those obstacles, all right? So once I've done all the data gathering, okay, I've gone out there, I've looked at the whole picture, I've really taken stock of my strengths to make sure I'm correct. I've made sure that I understand my weaknesses or I've got ways to try and find out the information or I know what I don't know. Okay, so I know that I don't have that information. That's a weakness. I know I need to go find it. And that therefore becomes a bit of a threat if I don't. Okay, I know what the opportunities are out there, so I've gone out and looked at where I can find the information and how that's going to help me and what I can use to my advantage. I've thought about the threats, so what's happening out there, my competitors or even my own my own internal aspects that I need to start considering really quickly, and I've put them all into that, I've put them all into my matrix so I can really start to see what's going on. Okay, so what I then do is start to think about, asking the questions. So what does that mean? What are the answers? Okay, so if I have insufficient staff, what does that mean? If I've got these strengths, I've got great knowledge, well, what does that mean? These opportunities are coming up. Well, there's a new vacancy opening over the road. Well, what does that mean? There's threats over there. Okay, what does that mean? And then I start thinking about, well, how can I use my strengths to deal with some of these opportunities and get the most out of them. What happens if my weaknesses and my threats start to combine? Okay, we start asking all the questions then about, well, what's happening? And what should happen after that is we start to get a really good idea of what's actually taking place, and that allows us to do that planning for going forward. Okay, so we just continually revisit the organizational data. We keep updating these. This doesn't just happen once. We can run it as often as we want. We can keep putting it out there, okay? You know, building these SWOT tables. Every time we make a decision, we can quickly then gather the data and think about that decision I'm about to make. How does that work with all of this? How does that make sure that I'm tying into the broader things in my organization? How does it make sure that I'm maximizing the strength, or how can I use the strength to maximize what I've got planned? How do I make sure that it's not going to fall into the trap of our weaknesses? How does it offset our threats, and how does it maximize the opportunities out there? All right, so this is just another way to play with SWOT. There are a bunch of spins on it. I've got my own little ones, my own secret squirrel ways of doing it. I put down the bottom. Sometimes I put the strengths and weaknesses of my competitors. I do all sorts of funky stuff with it. It's a great tool. It's a great chart. But remember, it's not chiseled in stone. It's not the Bible. We can play with it. Take it, use it, beat it up a lot, and try and use it to get good answers out of it. It's a talking tool. It's a living tool. Make sure you're updating it. Make sure you're using it. And do it frequently, okay? And it'll really help you come to some really good decision making, okay? Because it's not about necessarily, we're not telling you what to think. This is just a tool about, well, how can I think, okay? And what do I need to consider? Play with the SWOT chart, enjoy the SWOT chart, make it your friend. And aside from that, if you do that, you'll usually make some pretty good decisions. Just be really, really honest, okay? And if you can't be honest, then that's a weakness leading to a threat. Okay, but if you can be honest, then that's a strength that's going to open heaps of opportunities for you. Good luck with your SWOT charting.